Hello people, I'm Space Pirate Ridley, or SP Ridley for short. You may recognize me from the Planet Coaster Frontier forums, or my DC superhero world at Parque Warner Madrid, park recreation I made in Alpha 2 and Alpha 3. You can download that park on Steam Workshop, and I'm leaving a link just here so you can visit the video I made for it on my YouTube channel. So this is my next project. It's called Lake Towers, and this is my first time-lapse video. I know my voice and my English accent are not really that good, so I apologize for that. I'm also apologizing for the duration of the video. It's 30 minutes and that's maybe a little bit too long. I will try to make the next videos like 20 minutes or less, so they are more enjoyable. So in this time-lapse I will show you how I did the entrance plaza with an underground parking lot. I hope you like it, and let's get this thing started. As you can see, I'm starting with terraforming tools to plan the shape of the plaza I'm trying to make. I have to start by saying that this entrance of the park and part of the park itself, it's going to be based on the architecture of my hometown. Well, part of the architecture. My hometown is called Valencia, and it's a city on the east coast of Spain, and the architecture I will try to recreate here for the entrance plaza and the next buildings I will show in the next videos. It's the Art Nouveau architecture, but not the Parisian one that is the most known, but the Valencian one that is similar in some aspects, but it has some differences, like being very attached to the nature of the Valencian community, with free-flowing shapes for the decorations that try to emulate the forms of the famous Valencian orange trees, and some mosaics with the typical scenes of orchards and Valencian festivities. Although the central structure of the buildings usually looks more like the neoclassical buildings with more straight lines. There's a lot of surviving architecture from those days, but for the entrance plaza, before you get to the turnstiles, I wanted to make one of the missing buildings from my city, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this park also, because I like a lot of the photos I've seen from my city when it was in the 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century. It has a lot of amazing buildings and that I want to recreate, and this one is one of the missing buildings, or more like structures. It was a plaza designed for the front part of the city hall by Javier Goerlich in 1933 and sadly destroyed after 1961, only to leave a big blank space of plaza that we use for some festivities. It's really bland, and more when you compare it to the super nice photos I found of the Goerlich Plaza. You will see during this construction time-lapse that the plaza was like 5 meters elevated, and inside of the plaza, of the main structure of the plaza, there was a really big flower market, as flowers is a really important tradition in the city of Valencia. The plaza I'm making here is not an exact recreation of its real-life counterpart. It's much smaller in this case and only uses some of the decorative ideas it had, like the Art Nouveau fountains and gardens, and the underground flower market I talked before. Or in this case, it's an underground parking lot. Probably not as beautiful as a flower market, but it's something that I wanted to have in my real park. So it was a great idea to make the underground part of the plaza a parking lot. You can see in the time-lapse how I just made the central fountain and main piece of this elevated plaza. And right now I'm recreating one of its decorative columns. Ironically, even if the plaza in the game is much smaller than its real-life counterpart, the columns are bigger, because we don't have small hexagonal shapes in the game right now. But I think that being a little bigger makes for a better, more impressive park entrance if you come walking from the bus stations area. Right now I'm using the Roman top column piece to make the final touches to the main part of the column. Like you can see, these are the types of neoclassical details these Valencian Art Nouveau buildings had. At the top of the column you had a really big and impressive Art Nouveau light post. My city is surrounded by these types of light posts, but they're usually much smaller. In this case, the one that I'm recreating had something like 12 big lights going out from the central piece, each one trying to emulate the branch of a tree. I had a lot of trial and error using the lights in the game, but at the end I used a mix of the three types of lights. For the central part, I used the Alpha 1 Pirate light, while for most of the branches, I used the absolutely magnificent Red Fantasy light Frontier Geishas in Alpha 3. I love this one because it actually looks like something out of Art Nouveau architecture. I also used one of the other Yellow Fantasy lights to give a little bit of variety to the low branches part. In reality, all of the lights from the real light post are spherical. The base of the real-life light post also has a lot of flourishes and decorations that attach to the sides of the column, that makes it look as if they were the roots of a tree. And to make something similar, I used the new wooden decorative piece painted in black, just like the metal part, as this piece has lots of swirls and rounded parts. The real light post has 12 of these base roots, but in this case I decided to simplify it and give it 4 only. So while I'm copying the same column and light post to the other part, let's continue talking about the central idea of this park a little bit. Basically, there's going to be a really big lake in the middle of it, and from that big lake you will see like towers popping out in the distance. And all these towers have like different themes, like some are going to be like more fantastical, others are going to be more medieval, others are going to be more based in reality. So that's why one of the things I wanted to give to the entrance of the park, it was my hometown city, because it has a lot of towers on its buildings, and the entrance is going to be like, at first it's going to be like Art Nouveau buildings, like I said, and then it's going to change into a little bit of Gothic and a little bit of medieval. And as you can see right now, I'm trying to add like a water, well, not water, they are blue blocks, but it's because with the water we have right now, with the terraforming tools, we can't make man-made fountains. And I think it's going to be impossible also in the future because of how they're making the game. And well, they do the job. They don't look that great, but what are you going to do? And now I'm making a low wall that it's part of the wall of the decorative garden that goes near the fountain, with rounded shapes and patterns that again very typical of the Art Nouveau architecture. And then I'm repeating the same pattern on the other side. I really thought it was going to be a little bit more difficult to recreate exactly the same pattern, but as you will see, it didn't take too much time, really. Well, I have some problems here, but after that I could. They attached really well to the middle, so I didn't have much problem with it. Now I'm putting some grass and some vegetation, trying to make the grass a little bit more realistic. And now some vegetation, as you can see. Sometimes it's really fun adding these vegetations, and I think it's more fun now than it was in Alpha 2 because we have a lot of new vegetation. And as you can see, I put the new plants, the new vines that go through the wall, and to give a little bit of realism, and it looks really nice. And now I'm adding a little bit of decoration for white trim in the walls. And this is the hard part, okay? This was really hard to get right because it was horrible. The path system in the game right now, it's not really that good, and I wanted to do some circle staircase to go up the top part of the Plaza. Then I figured I didn't want to have the top part with rails, all surrounding with metal rails that when you elevate the path have. So what I had to do was elevate the terrain, and as you can see, it doesn't like to play with the terrain, the path system. It's really horrible. Like you can see, the only thing I could do here was leave a little bit of path with the metal rail that I really didn't want, but at least it's not the whole plaza with the rail. And you can see how now I'm adding one of the entrances to the parking lot, going on the ground a little bit. And here I am repeating the path on the other side that I thought it was going to be super difficult, and thank God it wasn't as difficult as it looked. They are not exactly the same, but they are pretty similar. So as you can see from the very big hole I took, and the fences I'm making right now, and try to recreate one of the parts that I most like from the Goerlich Plaza. That was a really big hole in the middle of the plaza where the flower market was situated below and had a really beautiful fountain in the middle. But funnily, the people during that time didn't like it very much. They basically called the plaza, the whole elevated part, they call it maliciously La Tortada, like jokingly, that it's like the name of big cake or something like that. And the people that most hated the plaza were the market, the flower market people, because they thought they were too deep down the underground and they didn't have enough sun for their market. But if you look at the photos, it's a really beautiful part, and it's a pity that it was so hated. And that's basically one of the reasons that when 1961 they took out the plaza away. And the market people, the flower market people now are situated at the top of the plaza, of the super bland plaza. So they like it more, but it's not as beautiful. And I was making the middle staircase that goes to the turnstiles of the park. And right now I'm going to put lots of floors of flooring, so it behaves like a real plaza, because as you know the path system doesn't let you do real plazas. So basically what I'm doing is elevating the flooring a little bit. Well, they're not floors, they're really roofs, but in this case we are using it as floors. And now I'm finishing the back part of the plaza, of the elevated part, as you can see. And if you look the plaza from above, like right now, you can see it has some kind of medieval shield shape. And even if it wasn't intentional really, because the real plaza has a triangular shape, and as I said, it was a smaller kind of recreation, not as big, so I decided to do it with a different shape. It plays really well with the medieval part of the city of Valencia, and I think it looks really nice also from the top. And some of these medieval aspects of the city, you will watch it in future time lapses when I start building the medieval buildings, like the towers and the castle walls that are still up. Some of them are still up on the city, and the Gothic buildings. So I think it will play really nice with the theming of the entrance of the park. And I'm saying entrance because not every part of the park is going to be themed as the Valencia city, okay, the old buildings of the Valencian city. And as you can see right now, I'm trying to hide the awful metal fences from the paths with the base of the Roman pillars. And even if at first I didn't like very much how they looked, at the end they didn't look that bad. They had the fences really well, and you will see in some minutes that they look kinda nice with some things I add to them. And I need to apologize for the huge jumping I make here from one part to the other. You have probably observed already that I jump quite a bit when building my buildings. It's not like I make a building and until I finish it I don't jump to another. No, I go through this part and then I retouch this part and then they come back. I'm pretty jealous of Silverhead because he usually works making a building and then finishing nearly completely. Well, sometimes he adds some decoration here and there, but he usually finishes the whole building first and then he goes to another building. So I think he makes more enjoyable time-lapse videos. But Silverhead is really a really good genius of Planet Coaster, so it's normal to be a little bit jealous of him. And you can see I've added some columns surrounding the whole, like the neoclassical columns that were in the real plaza. What was not in the real plaza were the wall windows modern wall windows that I have right now with the doors. That's because in this case it's not a flower market but a some parking lot. So I needed to hide the terraforming, the bad terraforming from it by putting this kind of modern walls from it. And now I'm doing the beautiful fountain this place had in the middle of the hole. That it's really great, and you can see here like I'm adding again the blue tiles to make it look like they have water. This is, I don't know if they're going to add like animated water in these fountain bases, but they really need to, because this really takes some time to do and doesn't look that great. Actually, one of the reasons of this fountain in the real Plaza was to give the market flower people some water for the plants. So that's why they had it there, not only for decoration purposes. And again, I'm adding the base pillars to hide the fence of the paths. This time they look much better. You can see now, like I'm doing one of the final decorations that make it look much nicer. And I'm copying this time, because if you've seen the whole video, I couldn't do this with the majority of things because they were mirrors. No, they were not exactly the same. So I couldn't do the copy and make a blueprint of them. I had to do a new one that looked like a mirror of it. And I will actually love if they put, I don't think they are going to do it, but I will actually love if they put like a mirror button for the blueprint pieces. And as shown here, now I'm trying to fix a little bit the walls of the staircases, of the older staircases, with some flower pots and some new decorations to them. And that fence I'm adding now to the Plaza, it's really great because they put it new on Alpha 3 and Valencia is full of them all around the city, in the parks and the gardens. So it's great. And here you can see the new light post, smaller one, a lot smaller than the one from the columns, and placing them in the exits of each staircase from the Plaza. And you will see this light post a lot around the park because it's pretty simple to copy and paste, and it looks great. So this is one of the entrance and exits of the parking lot. And you can see now I'm using one of the wooden doors I used before as the blueprint. The blueprint system has come super handy for us because we can build so much with it, and with wasting less time right now, it's pretty great. It's one of the best things of Alpha 3. And I'm glad Frontier added something like that. And now I've made one of those silly jumps I've talked about earlier. In fact, in this part of the time lapse, I'm going to jump from one part to the other a lot, more than usual, because I'm trying to get with some of the decorations I'm thinking about from one place to the other. And you will see here like I'm adding a curve, trying to replicate the same curve for the decorative gardens that I'm going to put at the top of the Plaza. You will see here I have a lot of problems trying to recreate exactly the same shape and form in one side and the other, but at the end, yep, I get it right. And if you see the benches, they were put there to know where the path below the roof tiles were, so I didn't put the decorative parts in the middle of the path. Again, another jump where I'm adding more decorative features to the parking staircases. As you can see, some fences and some Roman columns and the flower pots. The flower pots look absolutely great. I think they are new of Alpha 3, these ones, and they look pretty good. Now a little bit of decorations to the curve, and this is one of the other great vegetation new objects we have in Alpha 3 that are the topiaries that let me make a nice flora, garden floor. And this type of floor can be pretty useful for anyone to use in their parks. And I think it's a pretty great idea. I haven't seen anyone use it like this before, but there's probably someone out there that have done the same thing. And some tall trees, and now I'm doing the central staircase that will lead you to the actual park entrance, the turnstiles and the ticket booths. The steps with the roof tiles are pretty easy to do, at least when they are straight. I haven't showed how much it took time the rounded ones because it was pretty horrible video, so I didn't show it, but they have been done. And here I am adding to the front part another curve to add the vegetation of the front part that looks a little bit like the one in the back, but it's much smaller and without trees. In fact, I think I add one of the smaller trees that I would have loved if it was an orange tree, because Valencia, it's basically the land of orange trees, but I think this spherical one with the pink flowers looks pretty similar to orange trees, so they look pretty nice for this park. And now I'm adding the SFX of the water fountains for the big central piece fountain of the entrance. And these are not really more fountains, but like the water flowing from the one part of the fountain to the other, like small waterfalls, and they look pretty nice. I have to say that brief night shot was pretty cool with the red lights, and the light posts are looking pretty great at night. And the only thing I have to add more is that the SFX killed basically the FPS of the game. I was playing like with 19 FPS before placing those fountains, and after that I got like 40 or below FPS. I have to say I got pretty mad at Frontier because wow, if putting just 12 special effects in a park tanks the FPS so much, you really can't make dark rides with them or anything like that. But after switching off the game and returning to it, the game returned to 90 FPS. So I suppose it's a memory leak when you put a lot of special effects in a park, and I hope it's fixed in the future for the final release. And finally, as you can see here, I'm working on some real buildings. Even if they are pretty small, they are buildings nonetheless. And if you haven't guessed yet, these are like ticket booths where you buy the tickets, obviously. And here I'm making a poster for the ticket booth. This poster is something like a poster that it's an ad for the park, or maybe you can read the price of admission and season pass, or maybe even those types of posters that have like the time the park closes, or which rides are closed today because they are broken or in maintenance. And as you have seen, I used one of the wooden pieces, of the smallest wooden pieces of the game right now. It's called a wooden corbel, and it's under walls and decorations in the game. And it's also recolorable, so it comes pretty handy for the majority of things. But how I use it, if you have seen my DC superhero world recreation I made, that's on Steam Workshop, you can see I've used it a lot to make like decorations, posters, and statues of characters like Superman. So I think it's a great piece. It's like I think it's nearly the smallest piece we have in the game, and I would love to have a smaller piece than the wooden corbel, because it has some kind of backside that at the end it makes a little difficult to make statues with it. But right now it's probably the best piece we have to make them. But of course it's better if you have some kind of wall, like right now with the poster, to hide most of the piece behind the wall. And there's other good pieces to use to make these kind of decorations. You have the wooden plank, for example the recolorable one we have in Alpha 3, and it's pretty cool because one of the sides is super thin, so it's great to make letters. But the problem is you need a lot of space behind to hide the wooden plank itself, so it's only useful if you have you can hide it behind a wall that you are not going to build an interior. Something I usually like to make, and you will see that in the next time lapses. You may also have seen how I really like making interiors in my DC superhero recreation, like the insides of restaurants and shops. And it's not usually something that you see in most parks people are making right now on Planet Coaster, but I really like to give that personal touch to them. And right now you can see I'm adding some pergolas. It's the ceiling, the garden ceiling you are seeing right now. I'm making with some vines to the ticket booths. These ticket booths are a recreation, or somewhat a recreation, of the ones you can find at Portaventura Park in Spain. It's a pretty famous park. You probably have heard about it. It's one of the biggest parks in Europe, with Europa Park and Disneyland Paris. It was the first theme park I visited in 1996, so it has a special place in my heart. So a little story here is that I love to draw. I've also loved to design, and I went to Fine Arts University. So when I was small and came from that park for the first time, I had a fixation with that entrance. Something on my mind loved the pergolas and the ticket booths and the fountain before it. And I really like to add that type of entrance to all my drawings and the little paper models I made when I was small. So it was pretty fun to recreate that type of entrance with the ticket booth and the pergolas in Planet Coaster. It was a fun moment for me. You can see I'm giving the last final touches to the path systems with the flooring. Apart from the square one, I found there's like one of the same type of flooring, but with a little hexagon that finishes with a little. You can see it putting one here, and it was pretty nice to make diagonals in the paths. So I don't think the other one. I wanted to use another kind of theme path that we have right now of thin roofs to make more types of paths, but I don't think they have that type of diagonal, so it's a pity. And here I'm adding some curve to the paths. The problem here is these pieces I'm using to make the curve are too long. They are 4 meters long, like the walls in the game, and there's a part of them that does not fit with the others when you use them in the 2-meter diagonals of the paths. I didn't care too much this time because, as you can see right now, I could hide them under the topiaries. But if that wasn't the case, I would have to use something like the window friezes that are much smaller and manageable to create the curve. But this would add a more boring building to the time lapse, and not only for the time lapse, but also putting these kind of pieces, sliding them, then zooming in, see if they fit with each other. And that's probably the most boring part of the game and the most repetitive. But you need this kind of buildings to make the park look nice at the end. We are now entering the final part of the time lapse. I hope it wasn't too boring for you. As I said before, I would probably do much shorter videos, 10 minutes shorter, like 20 minutes or less, because at the end it's not only boring for you probably, but I don't know what more to add to these parts of the video where I'm only adding small details here and there and the vegetation. And of course, as you can see, I'm adding new lights, the new red lights that I love so much, to the parking lot hole with the fountain. And right now I'm adding some plants to the columns of one of the entrances to make like a little tribute, saying that the parking lot was in the real Plaza was a flower market. So it looks pretty nice and gives a little bit of more natural feeling to the parking lot entrance. And again, this is something that will be a little bit repetitive for the time lapse, that maybe I take in future ones, as I'm doing probably nearly the same thing I did at the entrance, that are adding new diagonal paths and the curve and some topiaries. And from now on I will only add vegetation, so no more buildings. So let me explain a little bit more about the park itself. So as I said before, this park is called Lake Towers Park, and it will be lakes surrounded by towers. And the main idea of the entrance of the park is going to be buildings in the city of Valencia. The first part is more about the beginnings of the 20th century buildings. Some of them are already missing, like the Plaza I built, the Torchada, and others are not missing. In fact, there are pretty important buildings in Valencia right now, like the city hall and post office buildings, that you can see some of it in planning with the walls and path systems right now, but are going to be built in the next time lapses. And the rest of the area of Valencia is going to be more medieval, more Gothic, instead of the beginning of 20th century architecture you can see right now. So the nearer you get to the central lake of the park, the more towering buildings you will see. One of the areas I want to add to the park is the Italian Tuscany with San Gimignano, that it's a medieval town with lots of towers surrounding it. And actually, one of the main ideas for the park before doing the Valencian part was making Praga, well, some of the most famous buildings of Praga. And that's going to be also a central part of the park. And well, this is the end of the video. I hope you liked it, even if it was a little bit too long. And also hoping to see you next time. Bye!